Welcome to Asian Ghost Stories, where we unravel eerie tales and delve into the mysteries that linger in the shadows. Today's story takes us to a quiet village shrouded in folklore and whispers of the supernatural. In a small, unassuming village in the countryside, rumors of ghostly encounters had long been part of the local folklore. The tales ranged from eerie sightings near the old cemetery to unexplained sounds echoing through the village at night. These stories have been passed down for generations, with each retelling growing more dramatic, weaving a tapestry of dread and fascination around the village's quiet charm. Most villagers dismissed these stories as mere superstitions, but for a young woman named Lan, these tales took on a chilling reality one fateful day. Lan, a high school student with an adventurous spirit, often enjoyed taking long bike rides through the village's serene, tree-lined roads. Her curiosity often led her to explore places others avoided. She found beauty in the abandoned and the forgotten, believing they held secrets that others were too afraid to uncover. Lan often dismissed the ghost stories as exaggerations, convinced that every tale had a logical explanation. One day, she and her best friend Mai decided to skip school and visit a friend who lived on the outskirts of town. The journey required them to choose between two paths. One passed through a military base, while the other led around a small, eerie cemetery. The military path was the usual route, but Lan, fueled by curiosity, suggested they take the cemetery road this time.
Mais hésita-t-elle, visibly inconfortable.
Lan, are you sure? Everyone says strange things happen on that road. Mai's voice was barely above a whisper, and her hands tightened on the bike's handlebars. They say people who go there come back different. Lan laughed, brushing off Mai's concerns. Oh, come on, Mai. There's nothing to be afraid of. Ghosts aren't real. Let's just take the shortcut and get there faster. Reluctantly, Mai agreed. As they pedaled deeper into the narrow, overgrown path that bordered the cemetery, an uneasy silence settled between them. The sun cast long shadows over the tombstones, and the air grew heavy, carrying an inexplicable chill. Halfway through their journey, Lan's bike chain suddenly jammed. Ugh, not now, she muttered, getting off to inspect it. Mai stopped a few feet ahead and looked back nervously. Hurry up, Lan. I don't like this place. Lan waved her off. It'll just take a second. She crouched by her bike, oblivious to how the wind had grown still, the leaves no longer rustling. The silence was suffocating, as if the world had paused to watch her. Every sound, a creak, a faint rustle, sounded amplified, making the hair on her arms stand on end. As she fiddled with the chain, she noticed a faint figure standing near one of the graves in the distance. At first, she thought it was an old man, dressed in faded clothes, with a large conical hat shading his face. Curious, Lan called out, "Excuse me, sir, do you live nearby?" The figure didn't respond or move. Instead, it remained eerily still, almost as if it were watching her. The longer Lan stared, the more uneasy she felt. She turned to Mai, but her friend's face had turned pale. "Lan," Mai whispered, "we need to go. Now." "What's wrong?" "It's just an old man," Lan replied, though her own voice wavered slightly. She turned back toward the figure, only to find that it had vanished. Where did he go? Lan muttered under her breath, a cold shiver running down her spine. Mai grabbed her arm. "Lan, please. Let's just leave." Finally, Lan relented. She fixed her bike chain as quickly as possible, and they pedaled away from the cemetery at a breakneck pace. As they rode, Lan felt an unshakable sensation that they were being followed. Her eyes darted to the shadows along the road, but each time she turned her head, nothing was there. Mai's anxious glances behind her only heightened the tension, until the relief of seeing the village outskirts made them both exhale audibly. The oppressive silence seemed to follow them, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves. When they arrived at their friend's house, Lan couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was off. Her hands trembled slightly as she parked her bike, and the faint chill that had clung to her during the ride still lingered. The usual bustling warmth of her friend's house felt muted, as if the shadows in the corners had grown darker and deeper. Her friend's grandmother greeted them at the door, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "What brings you two here today?" Lan and Mai explained their detour through the cemetery. The grandmother's expression darkened immediately. Her eyes seemed to cloud over, as if reliving a memory she had long tried to forget. "You shouldn't have gone there," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "That place holds more than just graves. It holds anger, betrayal, and things that should never be disturbed." "You shouldn't have gone that way," she said in a hushed tone. That road, it's cursed. Cursed? Lan asked incredulously. Why? Her words were confident, but a faint quiver betrayed her unease. The shadows in the room seemed to grow longer, as if drawn to the gravity of what the grandmother was about to reveal. The grandmother sighed and motioned for them to sit. Years ago, during the war, a soldier was ambushed near that cemetery. He was betrayed by someone he trusted and left to die. They say his spirit still lingers there, unable to rest. Many who pass through have seen him, and some have even been followed. Mai's face turned ashen. Followed? What do you mean? The grandmother's voice dropped to a whisper. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, her eyes darting toward the window as if she feared someone, or something, might be listening. The air in the room grew colder, making the girls huddle closer together. They say he attaches himself to those who show disrespect or linger too long. Have you noticed anything unusual since you left? Lan's heart sank as she recalled the figure by the grave and its sudden disappearance. She exchanged a nervous glance with Mai. I don't know. A faint thud echoed from somewhere in the house, making them all jump. Mai grabbed Lan's arm, her face pale. Did you hear that? She whispered, her voice barely audible. The grandmother nodded, her face grim. They know you're talking about them. Tonight, you must be vigilant. The grandmother nodded solemnly. You must be cautious. Tonight, before you sleep, light incense and offer a prayer. Apologize for disturbing the peace of the dead. That night, back at her house, Lan followed the grandmother's advice. She lit 3 sticks of incense and placed them on a small altar in her room. As she clasped her hands together in prayer, she whispered, I'm sorry if I disturbed you. Please forgive me and leave me in peace. At first, nothing happened. Relieved, Lan crawled into bed, believing the ordeal was over. But as she lay there, the faint sound of whispers began to creep into her ears, barely perceptible at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, until she could hear words, angry, desperate pleas. A deep chill spread through the room, and the shadows seemed to writhe and stretch toward her bed. But as the clock struck midnight, a sudden chill filled the room. The faint sound of footsteps echoed outside her window. Lan froze, her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she turned her head to look, but there was nothing there, or so she thought. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a faint shadow moving across the wall. It wasn't hers. It moved deliberately, as if pacing. Summoning her courage, Lan whispered, Who's there? The shadow stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a deep, resonant voice filled the room. Why did you call me? Lan bolted upright, her heart pounding. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. The voice softened, tinged with sorrow. I was betrayed, left to die. I only seek rest. Lan mustered her courage. How can I help you find peace? The shadow seemed to waver, its edges blurring. Return what was taken from me. The metal, it lies buried beneath the 3rd grave. The next morning, Lan shared the experience with Mai and the grandmother. That night, however, was anything but peaceful. As the 3 prepared themselves for the task ahead, strange occurrences began to unfold. The air seemed to hum with an unseen energy, and objects around Lan's house shifted ever so slightly when no one was looking. The small altar she had set up for the incense rattled violently just before the flames of the incense sticks extinguished themselves. Mai, pale and shaking, grabbed Lan's arm. Lan, what if he doesn't want us to find it?
Lan still herself.
He asked for our help. We have to do this. The journey back to the cemetery was fraught with tension. The path, now shrouded in an unnatural fog, seemed endless, twisting in ways it hadn't before. Whispers followed them, words incomprehensible but laced with an urgency that quickened their steps. Mai stumbled, scraping her knees on jagged stones hidden beneath the mist. Are we even going the right way? She cried, tears in her voice. The grandmother, clutching a bundle of offerings, turned her sharp gaze forward. We are. But he is testing us. Keep your resolve. As they reached the cemetery, the fog thickened, and the temperature plummeted. Lan's breath formed clouds in front of her, and the rustling of unseen movement surrounded them. When they found the 3rd grave, Lan hesitated before plunging the shovel into the damp earth. Each stroke seemed to echo unnaturally loud, as though the ground itself protested their efforts. The three of them returned to the cemetery, carrying a shovel. They found the grave the spirit had mentioned and dug carefully until they uncovered a rusted military medal, its surface engraved with symbols of valor. Just as Lan brushed the dirt off the medal, a piercing scream split the air. The shadows around them coalesced into a figure, the soldier spirit, more tangible now, his face etched with pain and fury. "You should not have come here," his voice roared, shaking the very ground beneath them. Lan held up the medal, her voice trembling but firm. "We came to help you find peace. Please, take this and rest." The figure's hollow eyes bore into hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Then he lunged toward her, his form shifting between solid and spectral. Lan braced herself, but it was the grandmother who stepped forward, holding the incense aloft. She chanted in a language Lan didn't understand, her voice unwavering despite the spirit's fury. The metal in Lan's hands began to glow faintly. The soldier froze, his form flickering. "You remember me," he said, his voice softer now, almost human. Tears welled in his eyes as he reached out, his hand hovering over the metal before dissolving into a wisp of light. The oppressive fog lifted, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers through the air. The grandmother performed a small ceremony, lighting incense and reciting prayers for the soldier spirit. The ritual was not without its trials. As the grandmother recited the prayers, the wind picked up, threatening to extinguish the incense. Shadows danced along the edges of the cemetery, forming fleeting shapes of soldiers, each one watching silently. My clutched Lan's arm tightly, her nails digging in, but neither dared to move. When the final words of the prayer were spoken, a soft glow enveloped the metal, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to sigh, as if releasing centuries of pain and sorrow. They buried the medal in a new grave marked with flowers and offerings. From that day on, Lan never experienced another haunting. However, she often felt a serene presence when she passed by the cemetery, as if the soldier's spirit lingered to protect rather than haunt. The villagers, once fearful of the cemetery road, began to use it again, finding comfort in the wildflowers that now grew in abundance. Lan often visited the grave, leaving fresh flowers and incense, a silent tribute to the soldier who had finally found peace. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe to Asian Ghost Stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe in the power of unresolved spirits? Let us know, and stay tuned for more haunting tales to come. The cemetery road, once a place of fear, became a path lined with blooming wildflowers, as if the soldier spirit had finally found peace.